Welcome back. This is video 5 in the Mapping for Mature Bucks series. Today we'll be discussing boots on the ground scouting. We will delete the guesswork off the map from our e-scouting effort in video 4, and after a 4-hour effort or more in the focus area, our map will contain only reality from what was learned from our time in the timber. These methods have helped me become a more successful hunter on mature bucks, and I hope that they help you too. I've drawn a polygon around our thermal hub terrain feature, and I like to keep my focus area in these situations to less than 100 acres. In some situations it might be a lot less. In some situations you might need to focus on more than 100 acres. But generally, if I'm not finding what I need to find down here in this thermal hub, I'm probably going to shift focus. What you might be looking for may be up in this section, which is another thermal hub. Over here to the east is our parallel ridge system terrain feature that I'll be talking about here in just a few minutes. There are a number of reasons why I chose this particular thermal hub. One, there's a big drainage over here to the west, and then there's a micro hub in here, and all of these secondary ridges dump over into this thermal hub. Over here to the east we have another drain over here, but the main drain is farther over here to the east, and that's why these parallel ridge systems and this thermal hub might connect a buck that is traveling long distances during the rut. This spot also works for a buck that might call this area his core area, because there are a number of different places for this mature buck to bed. Mature bucks just use the terrain differently. They bed in the best places, and they nearly always have a wind advantage. They're also very solitary animals most of the time, which requires them to have a heightened sense of alert. By contrast, a doe group of 3 has 6 eyes, 6 ears, 3 noses, and that helps a group to avoid danger. So a buck must be on a heightened sense of alert. They typically follow historic buck trails. They also like micro drainages. They seek these large community scrapes that are found in thermal hubs and on places where the terrain offers them the best choice for traveling long distances. If these spots have a lot of deer traffic in those areas, they're definitely worth a focus. When you zoom in on the thermal hub, you're going to see we set this map up earlier. I'm going to want to access it from the southwest. I'm also going to walk up in here and follow the creek as closely as I can to locate all of the different creek crossings that are in here. I'm going to make note of all of the creek crossings that are potentially not only good ones, but also ones that might be downwind of where I'm planning to hunt. The first thing that we're going to do in the thermal hub is we're going to spend some time in this area right here and look at all of these flat spots to verify that where we've guessed a scrape might be, that there is actually a scrape. If I don't find a scrape right off the bat, the first things that I'm going to want to do is I'm going to walk up at least to 3/4, or if not all the way to the top, and along that route I'm going to check everywhere there's a steep area. I'm going to want to dive in there a little bit to see if there's any rubs on either side of that. I'm also looking for secondary scrapes up here. But after you've walked up all of the different secondary ridges that come down into this thermal hub, if you are seeing a lot of good deer trails with a lot of fresh tracks and a lot of old rubs, then this is an area that you want to concentrate on. Once we've established that there's a very large scrape in here, and we've started up each one of these secondary ridges and found a few rubs, we've decided that it is a spot that we'd like to hunt either for the pre-rut or the rut, just because it also connects some major drainages to the far west and to the east. As you can see here, I've now walked every one of the ridges. I've walked up each one of the steepest places that we could find here. Anywhere there's any red and yellows, I definitely like to concentrate my efforts there. I also like to concentrate my efforts at the top of these micro drainages. These micro drainages really at the very tops is where a lot of bucks like to cross over the top, leave some sign. They usually leave sign along the edges of these more steeper areas. LiDAR helps you find these on the map because a lot of logging has taken place over the years. These old logging roads make great deer trails. We've eliminated all of the trails that did not contain rubs and turned them into doe trails. Eventually I will just completely eliminate these off my map, and in video number 6 we'll go through exactly how I would hunt this and talk about winds, we'll talk about setup, and we'll talk about thermals. If I've zoomed back out, now we can see our connecting drainages scenario, our parallel ridge system scenario. Up here is a wagon wheel, and down here is the scenario that we just, a map can get very cluttered very quickly. It shows you what you need to look at though whenever you zoom in on it. Go back over the fact that when we zoom out in these spots, we can really see how a buck might travel long distances. I even see another wagon wheel scenario here where there's a ridge here, a ridge here, a ridge here. This ridge comes up, these ridges all come up, and there's a big drain over here, and there's a big drain over here, and there's a big drain over here, and there's a big drain up to the north. So this might be another wagon wheel type scenario. If I'm walking into any of these ridge system scenarios, which are the connecting drainages, parallel ridge systems, the wagon wheels, I like to walk the tops of the drainages on the downwind side for the prevailing winds. Prevailing wind data for the area you hunt can be obtained from the historical section in Weather Underground. First thing you got to find, if there is one, is find the biggest scrape. Take note of its size, the size of the licking branches. The big thumb size branches are the best for licking branches. Is it as big as a truck hood? Are there layers of decomposing soil under the leaves, or is it hard compacted dirt and rocks? The hard compacted dirt and rocks means that it's probably been there for several years. And those generational type community scrapes can be really hot in the pre-rut and rut. Walk all of the drainages up on these tops one at a time. I like to walk up one drain and down the other side of that drain. While you're walking the deer trails, look for those multi-year signpost rubs. Is it fresh this year? Are the gouge marks high? How high are the tine marks? Which way was the buck traveling when he hit the rub, and what's down the trail from that and what's up the trail from that? Like the rubs that are higher tells me that the buck is at least a little bit taller, a little bit hefty. This process might take 4 or 5 hours. Key is to work slowly and be observant. Once you're finished mapping the area, probably ready to sit down, make sure you have deleted all of the pre-e-scouting guesswork, including the scrapes, the deer trails that didn't pan out, or just doe trails, and anything that is not truth on the map. Your map should now contain a lot of truth, and the amount of sign and the amount of deer traffic in the area should be able to tell you if the spot is worth hunting or not. Now zoom out. Is enough left on the map that might convince you to hunt in that spot? How many deer are using the trail systems? If there's no convincing sign, then it's time to move on. It's easy to see on the map and confirmed by what you see when you're walking around. During the pre-rut, you're trying to determine if one of these terrain features holds a mature buck that might call it his core area. A core area could be used for 3 or 4 days, up to 2 or 3 weeks. It could be using it for a month if there's some ag nearby. Trail camera data that I see shows a big buck will show up for 2 or 3 days. He'll stay there and then he moves on. Individual bucks have different tendencies. Some are loners, some don't travel very far, and some travel extremely long distance. I'm looking for spots that work in the pre-rut, October the 24th through about November the 3rd. And then once the does in the core area are bred, these bucks start traveling long distances. And with these different terrain types, you can be in the right spot for both the pre-rut and the rut if you find the right spot within a spot. You have to be sitting in the right location. We'll zoom back in on this parallel ridge system scenario. Here I've guessed at where all of the trails were at, and we walked in here and we followed all the trails. We determined that some of these trails are mature buck trails, some of these are young buck and doe trails, and then we color code them to see later on which ones we want to eliminate. I would bet that there is a scrape on some of these flats because the way this sets up, through this gap goes over to a great big drain that comes across this little saddle, and then we have to figure out where the mature bucks are going to move across this parallel ridge system, because mainly big bucks are doing a lot of daytime movement, I think, when there's a northwest wind or a north wind when it's cold outside. So on the lee side of a north or northwest wind is where the big bucks will travel. And you want to be set up in the right location. I've picked a few spots here that I might set up in. We'll dive deep down into that when we get into the individual terrain feature videos. In video 6, we'll talk about the thermal hub feature. In video 7, we'll talk about topographic hub or the wagon wheel. Connecting drainage scenario in video number 8. And in video number 9, we'll do a little deeper dive into this parallel ridge system. There's some terrain features in here that when we zoom in on them, you're going to want to see. Over the years, I've learned that I can go check these spots and quickly determine after checking about 10 or so spots whether or not a big buck is using this area. I like to find old rubs. Old rubs and new rubs combined, multi-year generational trails that are connecting distant drainages and where these big bucks like to go when they travel long distances and how they stay safe in hill country terrain. If you like this sort of content, please make sure you leave a comment, like the video, share this with another hunter. I hope you have a good hunting season.